Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to IA Command, and we are back for another segment of a new segment for a campaign that I am calling A Closer Look, where we focus down on a more niche or different card or item from the campaign and really look at how to use it and when is the best application for it. But before we start, I want to say sorry to all my skirmish players that I only got one video up this week. It's been a pretty busy week in terms of my Imperial Assault time, helping out with supporting tournaments and whatnot. But next week, don't worry, we've got the tournament games are going to be going up. We're going to be doing the game log reviews for the March tournament games that have been going on. I'm going to finally be posting those, and hopefully we'll get some coverage of Adepticon, which is happening this weekend, and there's tournaments right now. So if you're seeing this, it's Friday, March 22nd. Good luck to everybody who's playing in Adepticon right now and on Saturday. Alright, but let's get into it. Today we are going to be talking about the Gaffy stick from Twin Shadows campaign. This is a tier 1 item weapon. It is a club. It costs 200 credits. It's a melee attack for red and a yellow. It has a built-in Pierce 1, Surge for Weaken, and has one attachment slot. And before we dive into some of the combos you can pull off with this card, when is the best time or ways to use it in the campaign, let's talk about some lore, because I find the lore on these cards is interesting and I never talk about them. So the Gaffy stick is also known as the Gaffy in the native language of the Tusken Raiders. It is the weapon of choice, or at least the melee weapon of choice for the Tusken Raiders, also known as the Sand People, on the planet of Tatooine. And it was actually first seen in A New Hope. It was used against Luke to knock him out while he was attempting to spy on some Sand People that had taken R2-D2. And interestingly enough, according to the Wikipedia article, each Gaffy stick is actually unique, as they are made from salvage that the Tusken Raiders find out in the desert, mechanical salvage, and they put them together to make these weapons. And even more interesting is that George Lucas, when he created the design for the Gaffy stick, was inspired by a traditional Fijian war stick called a totokia, which are super badass looking. And you can see them here. They are a traditional war club of the Fijian people. And that in turn was inspired by the pandanus fruit, which I am very familiar with, as we have a lot of those fruits in my home state of Hawaii. Alright, so now that we've looked at the lore, let's look at the actual cards here. So we've got the Gaffy stick is tier 1. The main advantage of the Gaffy stick as an item that you can pick up is how cheap it is. For just 200 credits, you're getting a pretty good weapon in terms of damage output compared to other tier 1 weapons, mostly because of that red dice and the built-in Pierce 1. So you're never relying on getting extra surges to get that Pierce 1, and it means you can use your surges for other things, like recovering strain, or if you can give it other surge abilities. So we're going to be looking at a lot of that. The problem with the Gaffy stick is that it's 200 credits worth of a weapon. It caps out pretty well, and it has very swingy dice in red and yellow. So if you could roll a single damage and a single surge on the Gaffy stick roll, and you're going to be pretty sad and possibly doing 0 damage. Although even if you against a single block dice roll on the defense dice, you're still going to be doing 1 damage with that. So it's actually, I mean, it's okay. The Pierce 1 really helps out with this weapon, and it's the main feature here. And what we're going to be taking advantage of. So let's look at some combos that you could look for if you've picked up a Gaffy stick. And it's not a bad pickup. In fact, I think it's good to invest in a Gaffy stick when you're in tier 1 if you see it and you're looking for a melee weapon. Again, it's so cheap. Oftentimes you can. I think the Imperial Commander 2 app. The rules are you can trade in any weapon for full value back to the store. So might as well. It's definitely an upgrade to a lot of starting melee weapons. And even if you are playing traditional rules where you have to pay half the credits to sell it back to the store, you're only losing 100 credits when you sell this back. So it's a super cheap investment. It's very low risk in terms of a early upgrade to your melee damage output. But let's look at some combos here. So in tier 2, there's not really many combos that I saw in tier 1 with the weapon. If you guys see one that I missed that I'm not thinking of, I guess responsive armor is a possible combo in tier 1, since it gives you an extra surge ability to gain a block or evade token. And frankly, the surge for weaken is not very appealing on the Gaffy stick. You don't really need it. You're trying to just defeat things. The block token will be much more useful than a weaken token or a weaken condition on the defender. I guess I missed this one as well, the Combat Vembrace, since you can exhaust it to reroll an attack die that has a single attack icon. Since the Gaffy stick, as I mentioned, has very swingy attack dice, the red and the yellow, they can roll super hot and do like 5 damage pierce 1, or they can roll just a damage and a single surge. So being able to reroll the red dice, especially the red, because the red is so good except for that one side. So when you do roll that bad dice on the red side, being able to re-roll it will often result in +1 or +2 damage even. But also the yellow die. The yellow die is not as good to re-roll because it has more bad sides that you can re-roll into. But still, if you can re-roll, if you can try and get that double damage or single damage side on the yellow dice, you're often going to have a target for the Combat Vembraces, because yellow has, I think, 3 faces on it with a single attack icon that you can reroll. Actually, it might even be 4, so I can't quite remember. But anyway, so yeah, you do have those options in tier 1 items. They're okay, but they're not the reason I would invest early in a Gaffy stick. But these next items are some really, really good combos with the Gaffy stick. So next up, Energized Tilt Tier 2, 250 credits. You can exhaust this card when you declare an attack to replace one die in the attack pool with an attack die of your choice. Fantastic with the Gaffy stick because you can use it to replace the yellow die, which we mentioned is not very great with the Gaffy stick since you don't need those surges. Replace it with a red, then you're rolling red with Pierce 1 in 8. That is a pretty powerful attack. That is definitely tier 2 weapon, about 500 to 600 credits worth of a weapon, but for just 450 credits total, because 200 plus 250. So again, it's really great credit efficiency. Next up, a little bit more expensive, but a very strong upgrade for it. The High Impact Guard is a modification. You can exhaust it while defending to apply +1 damage to the defense results, so that's great. But more importantly, it grants the weapon Surge for +2 damage. So this is going to really supercharge the Gaffy stick, because anytime you roll a Surge on it, you're going to be adding +2 damage to your attack results. It really brings up the minimum damage that the Gaffy stick can do. But it is 500 credits, so overall you're spending 700 credits on that, but it does create a pretty strong weapon. Mandalorian Helmet. This one is 250 credits for a helmet that gives you +1 health, but also you can spend a strain to exhaust while attacking to reroll one of your dice. So same reason that the Combat Vembrace is good, you get to reroll those swingy red and yellow dice results. The reason that I am mentioning this, because 1 strain for reroll is not that great, but the reason I'm mentioning this is that this is an accessory, it's not a modification, it's not an attachment. So that's nice because it doesn't take up your attachment slot on the Gaffy stick, so you can bring the Mandalorian helmet and still bring one of these attachments to buff up its damage. So it's a nice option to pick up for the Gaffy stick. And then in tier 3, this is actually what I think is probably the strongest combo you can make with the Gaffy stick out of the regular items. The Vibro Generator is a modification attachment. When you declare an attack, you can apply -2 strain and +2 damage to the attack results. So very similar to the high impact guard in that instead of useless surges, you're going to be doing +2 damage on all of your attacks, so you don't even need to roll a surge. You could roll, again, all damage pips on your attack, and you're still going to do +2 damage. And Pierce 1. It's insane. And it's the thing that makes it better than High Impact Guard is it's only 350 credits. So for 550 credits, you're now rolling red-yellow with +2 damage and Pierce 1 innate. That is a tier 3 weapon in terms of strength. It's basically it's better than 3 dice almost. I mean, you can't convert. You're not converting surges, so it's about the same. But the Pierce 1 makes it about the same as a 3 dice weapon when you add it to the fact that you're always getting +2 damage instead of a dice roll. It is very similar to a tier 3 weapon for just 550 credits. And then finally, the Admiral's uniform. And I probably should have mentioned where these are from. Sorry, the responsive armor is from Heart of the Empire. Combat Vembrace is from Tyrants of Lothal. The Energized Hilt is from Jabba's Realm. The High Impact Guards from the Core Set. Mandalorian Helmets, also from Tyrants of Lothal. Vibro Generator is from Return to Hoth. And then we have Admiral's uniform here from Jabba's Realm. Again, 350 credits for an armor that gives you +1 health. And this one's very similar to the Mandalorian helmet, but it doesn't cost a strain. And you can exhaust it after any rebel figure within 3 spaces rolls any number of dice. And that figure may re-roll any number of those dice. So this is a much better version of the Mandalorian helmet. It doesn't cost a strain to re-roll. Of course, you can use it on yourself since you are a rebel figure within 3 spaces of yourself. And you can re-roll any number of your attack dice when you're using it. Also, you can use it on your friendlies, your teammates, if you did not need to use the re-roll. And again, it's not a modification. It is an armor, so you don't have to take up your modification slot on the Gaffy stick to include the Admiral's uniform, so it can be very powerful. The Gaffy stick with the Vibro Generator and the Admiral's uniform, very powerful weapon, very powerful indeed. So those are some of the generic cards from the item deck that you can combo with the Gaffy stick that are quite powerful. Now let's look at some heroes that really like to use the Gaffy stick. And we're going to start off with, we're going to go in order of effectiveness. So I'm going to start off with a hero that I think is the best with the Gaffy stick, and then we're going to kind of go down through the ranks to the hero that is, just okay, or is, relative to the other heroes, the least effective, but still would want to use the Gaffy stick as their weapon of choice. So, Shila Varad from the Jabba's Realm expansion loves the Gaffy stick. She has so many cards that work well with it. Swords Dance is a big one. It's 1 strain for 3 XP. You exhaust it after you resolve an attack with a melee weapon. You remove 1 die from your attack pool and perform an attack with the same weapon and target. So for 1 strain, you're getting a free attack, but normally it is a extremely nerfed attack since it removes a dice from the dice pool. But with the Gaffy stick, you're still rolling red dice with a Pierce 1 innate. You're often going to be doing the damage that you roll on the red dice, so it's usually worth about 1 to 2 extra damage of an attack. And it can be worth more depending on some of the modifications you can bring with it. So Swords Dance, really good with the Gaffy stick. If you can get modifications on the Gaffy stick, like the Vibro Generator, it's insane with Swords Dance, because with Vibro Generator, right, you don't care that you're losing surges from the yellow dice. You're getting +2 damage no matter what. The -2 surge, you don't care. So with Swords Dance and Vibro Generator on the Gaffy stick, you're attacking with a red die with +2 damage and Pierce 1. It's very powerful. All Out Attack is for 1 XP. It lets you exhaust the card while attacking with a melee weapon. And very similar to the Vibro Generator, lets you apply +1 damage and -1 surge. And again, Gaffy stick, no good surge abilities. We don't care about surges, so the +1 damage is excellent on the Gaffy stick. And again, you combine that with Swords Dance, since it is an exhaust, you'll be getting a very good, powerful attack out of Swords Dance for just a single strain. We also have Proximity Strike. Exhaust this card while attacking with melee weapon. You may force the defender to reroll 1 defense die, then you may reroll 1 attack die. Also fantastic, Gaffy stick with that Pierce. You really only fear the triple block result on the black dice or the dodge result on the white dice, and with Proximity Strike you get to completely protect yourself from those results. And then whatever they do get, usually they'll roll like a single block or double block on the white or the black, and you just pierce it because you have Pierce 1. And then of course, as we mentioned, re-rolling attack dice is really good with Gaffy stick because of the swingy nature of the red and the yellow. And then Full Sweep is her 4 XP card. Exhaust this card while attacking with melee weapon. The attack gains cleave 3. And this is not necessarily comboed. It doesn't necessarily have synergy with the Gaffy stick. But the nice thing is, it doesn't cost a surge or anything. It doesn't require anything. It just adds it to the attack. So this can really power up your Gaffy stick for no extra cost. And then she has a bonus reward card if you complete her side mission that says before you declare an attack with a melee weapon, you may have the attack gain one of the following: Surge for +2 damage, Surge for recover 2 damage, or Reach. So again, fantastic with the Gaffy stick for the same reason as the high impact guard. Adds the surge for +2 damage that the Gaffy stick lacks, and it really boosts up its minimum damage. Obviously doesn't work super great if you're using all-out attack or vibro generator, since you're going to be losing your surges, but you can choose when to use all-out attack while attacking. That's the nice thing about all-out attack. So you can save all-out attack for when you roll multiple surges on your Gaffy stick, and then you still have your 1 surge left for surge for +2 damage. So anyway, Shila, fantastic hero. I would always recommend picking up a Gaffy stick with Shila, because again, one of the biggest benefits of buying the Gaffy stick is that you are saving credits for your other heroes. So your other heroes can invest in the more expensive items that they don't have that synergy with the cheap stuff. So Gaffy stick, great with Shila. Next is going to be Jared. And I got to use this with Jared in my Heart of the Empire campaign that I played for the YouTube channel. Jared's got some nice synergies. Not a whole lot, but he's still quite good with it. First of all, it's good for Jared because it's a 200 credit melee weapon, which gives you something to exhaust for parry. You want to get an extra melee weapon as soon as possible with Jared, so that you can get that extra parry trigger. So you have 2 weapons to exhaust for parry, which lets you exhaust a melee weapon to apply +1 damage or +1 evade to the defense results. So for just 200 credits, you now have another weapon you can exhaust. The next ability that's pretty good with Gaffy stick is Explosive Reflexes. This gives you +1 endurance for 3 XP, but it also says exhaust this card when you declare an attack with a melee weapon, or when Jax declares an attack. Or when an attack targeting you is declared. I didn't even realize that. To replace 1 die in the attack pool with another attack die of your choice. So again, this is very similar to the card we saw above, which was the Energized Hilt, but it's on an XP or a class card. Lets you swap out the yellow die for a red die when you attack with the Gaffy stick, and red with Pierce 1 is very good. Also, if you get the X8 upgrade, if you can play and win Jared's side mission, it's much better. It makes the Gaffy stick a lot better, because the only problem here, the lack of synergy, is that Jax gives you Pierce 1 on your attacks, which doesn't always stack well with the Pierce 1 from the Gaffy stick. You can go overboard with Pierce if the defender only rolls 1 block. So if you can turn that Pierce 1 into +1 damage with the X8, it goes a lot better with the Gaffy stick. Alright, so our next hero, which is a little more interesting to talk about, is going to be Davith. So Davith, you might not first think that Davith would be all that great, and I'm going to actually move. You might not think that Davith would be that great with Gaffy Stick because he's got his Shrouded Lightsaber already, which has amazing surge abilities. Also, Falling Leaf, not so great with the Gaffy Stick since it adds a yellow die to the attack pool, and the Gaffy Stick notably has very bad surge abilities that you don't benefit from getting extra surges on. Same with his ability to hide himself, which gives him extra surges on his attack. Doesn't seem super useful with the Gaffy Stick. However, there is a build of Davith that you can follow if you get a Gaffy Stick early. You can go with this build, which is not too far off from a normal Davith build. That can really benefit from the Gaffy Stick. First of all, Davith has all of his melee weapons gain Surge for Hide. So the problem with that is that it doesn't surge for extra damage. So oftentimes you're having to choose, when you're attacking with Davith, you have to choose between, do you want to surge for extra damage, or do you want to surge to become hidden again, which then turns on a lot of Davith's other abilities. So the nice thing is with the Gaffy Stick, you don't have those surge abilities that you're giving up, and so you can more freely use the Surge to Hide on with Davith's Cloak and Dagger ability. But then the build that we can go with here, that we're going to go with, is Embody the Force and Fell Swoop, so 2 4 XP cards. And you'll most likely start off with Covert Operative. I actually think Covert Operative you just should always start with as Davith, should be your first XP upgrade, because it starts you hidden at the start of each mission, which really helps to get that cycle started of being hidden for the whole mission. Because otherwise, you have to throw away a surge to become hidden with your first attack. So it makes his first attack really weak. But with Covert Operative, you start hidden, it makes your first attack way stronger, and then it's much easier to stay hidden through the game. Since it also allows you to become hidden anytime you are defending and roll a dodge, which is really helpful. But then once you get the Gaffy Stick, you'll want to pick up. I think you'll probably want to start with Fell Swoop. With Fell Swoop, it adds a double surge ability to any melee weapon you're attacking with that says after this attack resolves, become hidden and move up to 2 spaces, then perform another attack. So again, this is fantastic for getting extra attacks in. The problem is, again, you're spending 2 surges. You are often giving up dealing extra damage with your weapon's surge abilities to use this. But with the Gaffy Stick, there's no opportunity cost there. You don't have any good surges on the Gaffy Stick. The benefit of the Gaffy Stick is the innate Pierce one that you don't have to spend a surge on. So Fell Swoop, much more efficient to spend surges on Fell Swoop with the Gaffy Stick. Since you do still get that yellow die, and you're still getting a +1 surge from if you starting off hidden. And the great thing about the Fell Swoop is it re-hides you before you perform the attack, so it's going to give you that extra surge again to stay hidden after the second attack. Once you get Fell Swoop, I recommend getting Blindside, since that's going to let you do even more damage when you cut through somebody. So the cool thing about Fell Swoop is that it says move up to 2 spaces, so you ignore extra movement costs when you move through a figure with it. So what you'll often do with Fell Swoop is you're standing adjacent to somebody to attack them with a melee weapon. You'll then move through them and then move either past them or backwards, and then you'll trigger Blindside, which will do 1 blue dice of damage +1 damage if you're hidden. And of course with Fell Swoop, the nice thing is you become hidden and then you move the spaces, so you'll trigger that extra damage with Blindside. Also with Force Speed, same thing, it lets you move up to 2 spaces. You can cut through hostile figures with that without having to spend extra movement points. And then finally, you want to get Embody the Force, because his other abilities like Falling Leaf, and I think there's one other one. Also, of course, you won't want to be picking up his Shrouded Lightsaber, which is pretty expensive for 3 XP actually, and not my favorite weapon to spend XP on. Embody the Force gives you +1 endurance and +3 health. The +3 health is actually fantastic. The problem with Davith is if you become wounded, you lose Force Speed, which is his best ability. So +3 health, and you get to have that +1 block for exhaust. Will help keep Davith unwounded, which lets him keep using his force speed. But you also get to exhaust it to apply +1 damage, which is really nice. And all of that is great if you can get his reward card, which I did not put out here, but the Radiant Holocron. If you can complete his side mission, which is actually pretty difficult, but be warned. But if you can complete it, this card is amazing. It lets you ready any of your class cards. So you can use Fell Swoop again, which is insane for a third attack. You can use Blindside again to deal damage to something else. You can use Embody the Force to apply +1 damage. So yes, so this is the build I would recommend if you end up picking up the Gaffy stick early in the campaign with Davith. Moving on to the next hero that we're going to talk about is going to be Garon. So Garon doesn't have a ton of synergy with the Gaffy stick itself, and you might be wondering, is it really an upgrade to get a Gaffy stick over his starting weapon? Since, yes, the Pierce one becomes an 8 and no longer requires a Surge, but he also loses the Surge for Cleave 1, which is a lot more useful than Surge for Weaken. But the reason that I think this is actually pretty good with Garon is he has a... first of all, he is very strain intensive. Charge costs 2 strain to use. And then he's got some really strong class cards, but they also cost strain to use. So he will often just become instantly fully strained out in a single activation, and you have to rest with him constantly. And then you're often, once again, going to be fully strained once you rest and then charge, and you're going to be fully strained again. So it really hurts his action efficiency when you have to keep resting all the time. So the upgrade here is that with the Gaffy stick, your surges are now freed up to recover strain. You can recover 1 strain on each of your attacks. So effectively, when your charge will now only cost 1 strain, and then any other attacks you make will also only reduce your strain cost. So really good with Brutal Cleave, since after you resolve an attack, you can exhaust this card's 4 XP. You can exhaust this card to perform an additional attack targeting a different figure or object adjacent to the first target. So again, you're spending 1 strain to perform another attack, but as long as you roll a surge on your Gaffy stick attack, you can then recover that, and you're still doing a red-yellow with Pierce 1. And if you can get any of the upgrades we mentioned earlier, this will be worth like a tier 2 weapon to you. That will allow Garon to operate much more efficiently. He also has Vicious Strike for 3 XP, costs 1 strain, and when you declare an attack with a melee weapon, you can apply +1 damage to attack results. Honestly, it's almost like you are giving the Gaffy stick a surge for +1 with that. You don't have to exhaust the Vicious Strike, so it's great. You can use it on every attack. And basically, as long as you rolled a surge, right? You spend the surge to recover 1 strain, and you can then take a strain to apply +1 damage. It's kind of neat. It's a little bit of a conversion there. There are some abilities though that Garon you don't really want to do with it. First of all, Rage is just not as useful, his Rage ability, because Focus is just not as good on the Gaffy stick. It's still good, like you're still getting probably an extra damage or 2 damage out of it, but you don't get the benefit from the extra surges really from Focus. So for that reason, I wouldn't recommend taking something like what is it? There's one that focuses him. Although Ferocity can be good if you are focused, since you don't benefit as much from the green die, and it gives you a surge ability to use with the Gaffy stick. What was it? Oh, it was his reward card from his side mission, Life Debt. Which is usually pretty cool, because normally the Imperial player will just not target Garon, so that he doesn't trigger Rage, or he'll wound him right away, although then Unstoppable becomes quite good, especially with the Gaffy stick for that +2 damage. So yeah, Garon likes it. Next I'm going to talk about some heroes that I think are not great with the Gaffy stick and might not want to pick it up because of their abilities not working so great with it. So we're going to be looking at, again, some heroes that I think are not benefiting too much from the Gaffy stick. That's going to include, once again, Verena. Verena, I think, is just better off with the fighting knife. I think in most cases, fighting knife is going to be doing similar amounts of damage. You can surge for Pierce 2 on like 1 out of 6 dice rolls, and it's got the built-in +1 damage, so it's not quite as strong as the Gaffy stick, but it is close. So it's not a huge upgrade over her fighting knife, weirdly enough. Also, a lot of her abilities are triggering off of like pistols or other things that just don't really work with the Gaffy stick. And when she uses close quarters, she's not using the Gaffy stick, she's using just a predefined dice pool. So stuff that works with close quarters isn't going to boost the Gaffy stick's damage. The one thing that is useful with her that she might want to pick up a Gaffy stick is her 4 XP ability, Combat Mastery. Special action for 1 strain, you perform 2 attacks, 1 with a melee weapon and 1 with a ranged weapon. Again, the reason the Gaffy stick is good there is because it's so cheap, so you don't have to overinvest on getting 2 expensive weapons to deal good damage with Combat Mastery. The problem with Combat Mastery is that it's 4 XP, so you're not gonna see it around the same time as the Gaffy stick for the most part. But if you do see the Gaffy stick and you know you're gonna go for Combat Mastery with Verena, then it is probably worth picking up just so you have a decent and cheap melee weapon, because her fighting knife, I guess it's not that great over the Gaffy stick by comparison. So you are getting that extra yellow dice worth of damage. It's just the Pierce 2 sometimes can make them feel very similar in damage output. Tress is not so great. I was looking at her class card. She doesn't really have anything that synergizes with the Gaffy stick. Her style tokens add +1 damage to her attacks, which is good for any melee weapon. It's not particularly good with the Gaffy stick. There's nothing that can really like sacrifice surges for extra damage, which is what you want to see with the Gaffy stick, or like give lots of extra cheap attacks. And in particular, one of her better cards, the Crate Dragon Fury card for 4 XP, lets you spend style tokens to apply +1 surge to attack results instead of +1 damage, and that's terrible with the Gaffy stick. We don't want more surges. We just want straight damage, so that's actually a downgrade from her normal styles. But on other weapons where you get abilities like Surge for +2, it's more powerful. Also, this ability is just powerful because it lets you exhaust it when you spend a style token to choose additional effects. So it lets you double up on your style token effects. So generally this one's good to bring. Finally, Onar. I mentioned Onar here just because it might seem like he would be good with a cheap close range weapon, since a lot of his abilities are centered around being adjacent to the target. However, he doesn't really get any benefit from the Gaffy stick itself. Nothing he does really plays on the strengths of the Gaffy stick in terms of sacrificing surges for extra damage or doing extra attacks for less dice or anything like that. So generally I would say Onar is better off picking up something like a hand cannon, where he can be more flexible in being able to attack either adjacently or at range. The only thing he has that really benefits from attacking adjacent figures is Hold Still, his 3 XP card, and that just applies -1 block or -1 surge cancel to the defense results, which is not particularly good with the Gaffy stick because, as I mentioned earlier with Jared, things that give you Pierce don't synergize well with the Gaffy stick because you can go overboard on Pierce. Pierce has diminishing returns, so the more Pierce you're adding, the more likely it is that it's going to be wasted against a low block result. Also, hold still bad because he focuses you, and you, again, Gaffy stick, not particularly good with focus. Focus, which adds a green die to your attack when you attack, is at its best when you have really good surge abilities, because the green dice has a 50% chance to roll a surge. And also you have that one side that has only one surge and no damage. So these heroes, if you're playing these heroes and you're thinking about looking at the Gaffy stick, I would say maybe look elsewhere and save your credits. There are not a whole lot of opportunities for synergy, but you could still pick it up because, again, it has those wonderful combos with the other cards in the item deck that we talked about, which can be really good with the Gaffy stick. So this has been a closer look, looking at the Gaffy stick in campaign. I hope you have gotten some inspiration for when you can use this card and how to use this card in the campaign. And see you later.